Cyberwork with Infosec has recently celebrated its 100th episode. Thank you to all of you that watch and listen and subscribe to both the audio podcast and our YouTube channel. We're so grateful to hear from all of you, and we look forward to speaking with you more about all aspects of the cybersecurity industry. To celebrate this milestone, we have a very special offer for listeners of the podcast. We're giving 30 days of free training through our Infosec Skills platform. Go to infosecinstitute.com/skills and sign up for an account, or just click the link in the description below. While you're there, enter the coupon code CYBERWORK, one word, all lowercase, CYBERWORK, when signing up, and you will get your free access. You'll get 30 days of unlimited projects to over 500 cybersecurity courses featuring cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, customizable certification, practice exams, skills assessments, and more. Again, check out the link in the description below and use the code CYBERWORK, CYBERWORK, to get your free month of cybersecurity training today. And thank you once again for listening and watching. Now, let's get to the episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week I sit down with a different industry thought leader and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. As you may have heard at the top of the show with our little promo, Infosec Skills is going to be a big part of our educational offering for 2020 and beyond. Infosec Skills is an interactive learning platform that boasts 500 plus security courses featuring cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, customizable certification practice exams, skills assessments, and lots more. Our guest today, Robert McMillen, is an Infosec Skills course creator and has had some pretty extraordinary early experiences in IT and consultant. But now he's decided to help future IT aspirants through education and training. So we're going to talk about all of those things and more with him today. Robert McMillen is the past president and founder of Alltech One LLC, a Portland, Oregon-based network consulting company. In 2017, the company was sold to Blackpoint-IT Consulting based out of Seattle. Some of his higher profile jobs have been restoring email for the government to prosecute Enron executives, train the network vulnerability assessment team for the U.S. Army, and perform wireless security auditing for the state of Washington. The NSA also requested an interview, but he decided he had had enough people looking over his shoulder for now. Robert, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So you've teased us with some pretty fascinating sounding stories, which we'll get into in a moment, but I want to know sort of how and when you first got interested in computers and tech and security. Was this something that you were interested in since you were a kid, or did it come later in life?
Well, I started out in the photography business. I was really excited about being a photographer as a teenager. I photographed for my high school and the newspaper and all that. My first job was actually to ride my bike to go take a picture for the newspaper.
Oh, yeah. You're a roving reporter.
Yeah, exactly. So by the time I was 23, I was pretty good at it. I had 3 stores, and they were combination studios and 1-hour photos. You remember 1-hour photos, right?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Drop them off in a week.
Yeah. Hopefully they're ready in an hour, not a week. But
see if they're that's right. See if there's anything, if you shot anything worth a damn.
That's right. Well, one of my customers several years after I had started the stores had brought me a sub 1 megapixel camera. And he said that he didn't really need it, and thought, asked if I'd be interested in it, and I bought it on the spot. It was $900 back then.
What year would this have been?
This would have been 1994.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Sub 1 megapixel.
Yeah. It was pretty fuzzy, but
I can imagine.
But I had to see what this was about. How was this going to affect my business? Because everything I was doing was film based.
Yeah.
So I started to take pictures with it, and I could really see its potential fairly quickly. And I knew that this was the beginning of the end of what, I was basically in a wagon wheel business. That was just at its last legs.
You were with the horseshoe man there, and
yeah,
watching
exactly.
the combustion engines coming along.
So I made a decision. I decided to sell the assets of the stores, close them up, go back to college, and learn computers and how they were going to change the world. So I completely went from, taking pictures at weddings and developing pictures in the 1 hour, to just going back to school to learn computers, because I knew that was the way of the future.
So that was like 94, 95 then?
Yep.
Do you still photograph? Do you use digital cameras now?
I had photographed 700 weddings.
Wow.
So I had to take a break. So I wouldn't even take
Yeah.
pictures at family gatherings
Oh
for
yeah.
a long
I can
time.
imagine. Yeah.
I let my wife do that. But now I've gotten back into it, and
Okay.
I also enjoy the DSLRs because you can do the video as well as pictures,
Yeah.
and so that's really a fun thing to do.
Yeah. I don't want to dwell on that too long, but what do you think of the sort of like, ever larger, camera capabilities and ever smaller phones and stuff? How do you feel like that in regards to the sort of photographic landscape?
Well, they're obviously getting much better, and I don't necessarily see them replacing professional grade equipment, but I could see people, and you can actually see the sales of cameras just going down, down, down.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty exciting, that
Mhm.
that it's happening, and people are able to get better, pictures. Especially, we need better pictures and videos of those UFOs that are coming now
Yeah.
because
Right. Exactly.
they're always so fuzzy, and
Yeah.
Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say we don't seem to ever get any clearer pictures, despite having better
That's right,
cameras
despite all that, yeah.
in our pockets. Yeah. So, so yeah, going back to what we sort of teased at the beginning there. I've heard just the most abbreviated portion of some of these stories, but tell me about the time you were called to restore emails for the Enron investigation case. What were your thoughts when the case was explained to you? Had you heard about it before they called you?
No, I didn't even know what Enron was. I actually
Okay.
told my wife. I said, they're calling me down to this company called Enron to go. I said, what is that?
Yeah.
So
You were
I mean,
right
I
there at
don't
the
think
cutting edge.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people knew, who they
No,
were before the scandal
of course.
was. And the restoration itself really wasn't that exceptional. It was kind of interesting because they sent me boxes of backup tapes. You remember backup tapes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so boxes of backup tapes 40 feet long and 2 feet high.
Wow.
So it took a little while to get through all that.
Yeah.
But what was interesting while I was sitting there, and really the only person who knew why I was there was the IT administrator, because he was let in on it, and I had to sign all these secrecy papers and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, so what was interesting was that everybody was doing business as usual. They had no idea what I was doing or what was
Mm.
about to happen, and
Oh, the
even the
hammer
stock.
hadn't come down yet, is what you're saying.
That's right, yeah. And the
Wow.
stock itself was trading at $60 when I started the restoration project.
Mm.
2 weeks later, after it hit the news, it was just a few pennies.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, how did they find you? What was it about your consultancy company that they said let's go with this person? Had you been doing other stuff for a while, or?
Well, it was prior to my starting my company officially. What happened
Hmm.
was I was just laid off the week before because of the .com or the .bomb recession,
Hmm.
back in 2001, and so I was actually jobless at that point. And it was funny because everybody on my street was all worked in high tech, and we were all jobless. We were all playing basketball all day and
Wow. Yeah. Oh
talking
yeah.
about the, yeah, it was pretty fun, but. I got called back by the company that had laid me off and said, "We do business with Enron, and we want you to
Oh.
do this one job as a consultant."
Okay. You said it was a pretty straightforward job, but did you learn anything from that project specifically?
Well, what they needed was someone who's experienced in Lotus Notes, which
Okay.
some larger organizations use, especially the accounting firms, and also someone who understood a program called ArcServe, which is a backup
Hmm.
program. And I was the only one who was certified and experienced in both in the area, actually. And
Hmm.
also, I didn't have any prior arrests. I had no issues with security.
Yep. You're
So
playing
they,
basketball all day. What problem
yeah,
could you be?
that's right.
Yeah.
So I think it was a right place, right time kind of a scenario. At that time, I was nobody special. I just happened to have gotten experienced in the things that they needed, and I got lucky.
How about some of those other? There were some other interesting stories in there. What were some other some sort of interesting things that happened? War stories, if you will, from your consultancy days. What were some of the
Yeah,
other
well,
interesting?
speaking of war stories, yeah, I did get a call from the Army, the U.S. Army, and they had heard about the Enron case, and some people were, higher up were interested in what I had to say about cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity is really in its infancy, around 2003 at that point, and the war in Iraq was just beginning, and so they asked me to come up. So I did some training with the troops and helped them prepare for what was to come. Now that we didn't have the sophisticated attacks like we have now,
Right.
but so what I mostly taught them about was port security. So
Okay.
of course you've got ports that are open by default when you install a computer or a server, and so what I did was I showed them how to protect themselves from malware by
Mm,
locking down ports using firewalls, which again, most people weren't really using back then. It was a fairly new thing.
okay.
So I had to show them how to use the firewalls and how to protect themselves that way, because they were setting up TCP/IP, Ethernet networks out on the battlefield.
Wow. So there probably, it doesn't sound like there were a lot of competitors in your area. So I guess I'm trying to get a sense of like what, of the things that happened, and these opportunities that came to you. Obviously, opportunities come, but you have all this preparation that allows you to sort of step up. Like what kind of advice would you give to people now? Like what should people sort of be aware of or have in their back pocket? What are some really useful, security skills these days that would, that could help you if someone come a calling and said, we want you to do this unusual thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, of course, there are degrees that you can get and certifications you can get.
Right.
But the funny thing about IT consulting and data security is how fast everything is changing.
Sure.
I also teach college now, and I've helped
Hmm.
out many of my students and colleagues start their own consulting practice. So I've had these very questions, in front of me many times. And the first thing I tell them is that they should not be complacent. This is one
Hmm.
of those industries that turns over about every 3 years.
Yes.
So that means that there's almost nothing over 3 years old that is very useful in a modern security role. And 3 years from now, there's almost nothing that can help you that you know today.
Right. Right.
So you have to be constantly learning and adapting to criminals and modern threats.
Hmm.
And this means taking more classes, doing skills assessment at Infosec, watching video courses, going to seminars, learning new technologies and
Yeah.
reading books, whenever you can.
I'll always be learning.
Always be learning. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, do you have any sort of strategies for that, in the sense of like what should like a person's average week, obviously they're working a day job or whatever, but do you
Right.
recommend like an hour a night of just kind of like keeping up with things, a couple hours a week? What do you think?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. How much time do you spend? Now, when I went to get my degrees, the early days when I went back to school to learn about computers, there were no degrees in infrastructure and
Hmm.
cybersecurity like there are now. And cybersecurity is actually a fairly new degree program in many colleges and universities. So the things I learned were just basically ad hoc classes that I was taking. But nowadays, it's a different story. So around 2010, I decided, you know what, they now have degrees, and I should probably look at getting those degrees. I already had a lot of certifications, and which was great. My business was already going great, but sometimes clients would ask me, "Hey, do you have a degree?" And that kind of thing. And what did you get your degree in? And so I decided, you know what, even though at the time I was 40 years old, it's time to go back to school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I did. I did. I went back. I got my bachelor's degree in IT administration, and then I went for my master's degree in IT management. And the way I did it was I worked, my usual 8 to 5, although in consulting sometimes it's 6 to 10, but
Yeah. Okay.
um, and weekends and things like that.
On call
But I
forever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I would spend about 2 hours a night after I'd go home, have dinner, spend about 2 hours a night working on, get passing my classes,
Hmm.
and that meant watching a lot of videos, reading a lot of books, and of course
Yep.
taking tests. And then on the weekends, I would plan on 4 hours a day for each day. Now, of
Hmm.
course, I had little kids at the time, wife and little kids. My kids are grown now, but or in college, but I was able to make that work for me because I still ended up having a couple of hours to spend with the family each night. And
Yeah.
then eventually, after graduating, I had a lot more time available, and I was able to make more money because I learned a lot of things.
Right. Now, let's sort of compare like 2001 with 2020 here, or 94, whenever you were sort of first doing this. Obviously the landscape's changed significantly, and
Sure.
well, on one hand, you were able to sort of help with the army by knowing about port security and things, so there were less things that you needed to know, but it was sort of harder to know them. Whereas now it's easier to find lots and lots of sources of information, but there's just so much more that needs to be done. Can you sort of compare and contrast like the challenges? Is it more challenging now, less challenging now, just different?
Well, Well, what's happening in the IT industry is the same thing that's happened in the medical community, and that is there was a time where you go to the doctor and the doctor was the doctor of everything.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
not the case anymore. There, you can rarely find a doctor
Yeah.
who is
GP. Yeah.
doing general practice, and
Right.
that's exactly what's happening in our industry.
Hmm.
So you're seeing specialties. You're seeing everyone is going to a specialty. So I think that makes it actually easier because people no longer are expecting the IT administrator to also be a programmer or to
Right.
be a cybersecurity specialist. I thought it was interesting. I went to a company recently where they were having a security issue. They actually got encrypted with ransomware, and their security team was actually so separate from their IT team that they wouldn't even let them talk to each other.
Hmm.
Which I thought was really interesting because
Yeah.
they believed that if the two groups were talking to each other, it could actually open up new security risks.
Oh, how so?
Well, because if you have disgruntled employees or
Hmm.
you have employees that don't necessarily know exactly what they're talking about and they're influencing other people,
Hmm.
then you could have issues. So they believed that by separating, and they're not the only ones. A lot of large companies are doing this. They're
Hmm.
by separating out those two groups, then the security folks can be watching the IT folks, and the IT folks can be
Watching
watching the
and
security.
yeah, watching with a little more distance or sort of impartiality or something, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
I thought it was difficult because it makes it collaboration is a big part of learning,
Yeah,
and
that's where I'm coming from. That seems very counterintuitive to me. So I'm curious what you think of
I
that.
would agree. I think it is counterintuitive, but we see a lot of these happening, and you're also going to see changes over time
Hmm.
too. 5 years from now, they're going to say, "Oh, what were we thinking?" And then 10 years later, they'll go, "Hey, let's separate those guys again." So people are
It's
always
cyclical, yeah.
practicing these things.
Sure.
Things are
Oh yeah.
changing.
Oh yeah. No, we're gonna need more than one lesson, and we're gonna get more than one lesson.
That's right.
So yeah. So moving on to the heart of the talk today, I want to hear about your work with Infosec Skills, and I believe you have created our Windows 10 host security course. And is that the one course you've created so far? Have you done any other coursework or collateral for us or anyone else?
I've done a lot of coursework for LinkedIn Learning as well as Microsoft,
Okay.
and I started out basically with a YouTube channel, which is where a lot of people found me. Up over 30 million hits right now, so things are going, pretty well. But so when I got the call from Infosec, I was really excited because I rarely get to talk about cybersecurity with any other medium, and so
Hmm.
being able to just talk about security, especially with Windows, because that's really my specialty. I have a Microsoft Certified Trainer certification and
Okay.
8 MCSEs. So
Wow.
I'm focused on Microsoft. I realize some people
Yeah.
are focused on Linux, and that's one of the great things about separating
Yeah.
these types of jobs is you can focus specifically on something. I don't even know how to spell Linux basically.
Yeah. Right. 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 Right.
Although
Yeah.
Linus Torvalds lives just a few miles from me, strangely enough.
Oh, wow. Small
Yeah, it's kind
small
of
world
funny.
after all.
Yeah, it
Um,
really is.
so I mean, let's talk a little bit about what students will learn in your Windows 10 host security class. Like what
Yeah, great,
give me
great
the arc
question.
of the arc of the course.
Yeah, so the course in Windows 10 security basically says, you know what, you already have most of the things that you need to know.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, most of the things that you need to keep your network secure. And a lot of people don't even realize that these are
Hmm.
included in Windows 10.
Oh.
And I've extended that into my new course for Windows Server Security, which is going to be released shortly. So I go through things like, did you even know that Windows 10 and Windows Server 2019 has an anti-ransomware button?
No.
Most people don't know that.
News to me.
You
Yeah.
can keep, we're always worried, which antivirus is going to keep us safe from ransomware. There's
Yeah.
a button you can check that will keep hackers from encrypting your files. So that's one of the things I show. I show local security, group policy security settings that you can set, app
Hmm.
blocker, so you can decide, whether you're going to allow certain applications to run.
Hmm.
Go very much into BitLocker, which shows you how to encrypt your drives. I had a client once that thought their hard drives were encrypted because they were using a program from IBM that said that, hey, your files are encrypted. But when you took the hard drive out and moved it to another computer, they weren't really encrypted. So
Wow.
you could
Okay.
see them. And so
Yeah.
this client lost a laptop, just
Hmm.
one laptop, and they came to us and they said to us, hey, our IT administrator said that this is encrypted, but we just want to make sure that it is before we decide whether or not we have to inform our clients, because there are laws that say if you lose client data, you have to inform them. So I went ahead and pulled the hard drive out, put another computer, said, hey, these files are not encrypted like your IT administrator said they were. That company sold a year later for pennies on the dollar because they told all their customers that they lost their data and their value went down to almost nothing. So just because they lost a single laptop, that's how
Wow.
important cybersecurity is, and,
Oh yeah.
and privacy.
I want to go back to this ransomware anti-ransomware button here just for a sec, because you just blew my mind. But like my two questions are, like, one, how does this work? Like what exactly is the mechanism that keeps ransomware out? And two, why does Microsoft not have this like burned into the side of a mountain or something? Like why don't they advertise this everywhere? Why are we learning about this in a course? I mean, I'm glad you're telling us about it, but I'm so curious. So let's get back to this ransomware
Okay.
button. I'm so
Yeah.
fascinated. Like, why is it? Like, how does it work? I was not aware that there was a mechanism like that. And two, why is that not like default pressed or whatever?
Yeah, why is it not turned on by default? Sure,
Yeah.
totally understand that. Well, the ransomware button can cause issues with certain encryption programs.
I see.
So if you're using a third-party encryption tool
Mm.
and you turn this on, then it may not work right. So that's why it's not turned on by default.
Okay, fair enough.
But if you do turn it on, the only type of encryption that will work are Windows-supported types of encryption, because
Got it.
it'll whitelist that type of an application.
I see.
But it's pretty cool. It says, hey, if this button is turned on, your files cannot be encrypted by any program that's not provided by Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
pretty neat.
The big focus of cyber work, obviously, as is in the name, is career and study and getting a leg up in the industry. So as someone who's worn a lot of different hats in the industry, what are some recommendations you have to help get people into cybersecurity who might have an interest but like no previous experience or background whatsoever? I mean, you went from photography into cybersecurity, and obviously that's still possible now, but what do you think?
Yeah, so if you're really new
Hmm.
to this whole industry, cybersecurity specifically is what you're asking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
IT,
Then,
cybersecurity, the whole umbrella.
oh, okay. So you're not just talking about cybersecurity, but basically anything that's out there.
Well,
Um,
IT or cybersecurity or penetration testing or just
sure.
part of the whole sort of family of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of employees don't realize is you are going to have to pay your dues. So if it's your
Hmm.
first IT job, you're probably going to be on help desk.
Yep.
And if it's your first cybersecurity job, you're probably going to be reading and learning to interpret a lot of log files.
Right. Oh yeah.
So I don't know if you ever had to go through a lot of log files before, but after a while it
Yeah.
gets a little boring.
Yeah.
But that's how you pay your dues.
Yeah.
So if you're brand new and don't know how to even spell or define TCP/IP, then what I suggest is that you start out with your first certification to be the A plus certification. And certifications are great because they're things you can earn very quickly. They have a lot of credibility. They don't cost a lot, and they don't take more than a few months to a year, to get them. So you can use the resources at Infosec to more efficiently attain security certifications. But I would definitely start out with the A plus certification, just because it's what a lot of employers, including myself when I was an employer, that's one of the things I asked for. So by having the A plus, you have a lot of base knowledge. But there are many great cybersecurity and other IT infrastructure degrees out there. Should you get them? Well, here's the thing: is are you going for a job that requires them? So you want to learn from the job boards. You've got Indeed, you've got LinkedIn, you've got a lot of different ones out there.
Hmm.
Find out what they're looking for. So if your dream job says you need a degree, then you should probably go get a degree. And there's a lot of good ones, out there. Like I said, now in cybersecurity, which I'm really excited about. I'm even teaching some of those, courses myself. So if you're going to work for the really big employer, the one that has great job security and benefits and the whole thing, that's the U.S. government and the armed forces.
Hmm.
And they don't care where you got your degree from; they just want to tick a box saying that you've got it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry so much about where you get your degree, as long as it's, a reputable place.
Mm-hmm.
So you can even go to places that are less expensive, nonprofit. I would definitely look for a nonprofit type of a college, university, and one that has a lot of online classes if you work, as most of us do, and you need
Right.
to do this kind of stuff after hours.
Yeah. To get a little more granular, in your opinion, what are some of the cybersecurity skills rather than certifications? What are some skills that are most in demand and most likely to accelerate your career? Like, what are some things that people are overlooking in their studies or preparation that they should be able to know backwards and forwards?
Yeah. So where I see things going is compliance, especially on the
Mm-hmm.
consultancy side. So
Yeah.
compliance is a big area that I believe is not only big now, but is going to be big and growing for many years. So the type of compliance we're talking about is PCI compliance, HIPAA,
Yep.
Sarbanes-Oxley,
Yep.
lots of different privacy acts that,
Yep.
based on various different states. I see a big uptick. I don't know if you've even heard about this, but in insurance compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to get something called cyber data insurance, I was surprised about 6 or 7 years ago when I first heard about this.
Yeah.
If you want to get cyber data insurance, you have to have somebody like me come in and basically affirm that you are safe before they will even give you that insurance. So you've got to be endorsed by somebody. A lot of the big accounting firms, they're not making the money off of the auditing like they were. They're making money off of cybersecurity, which I was also fairly surprised to hear about 6 or 7 years ago. They're paying really big dollars to have people do IT security audits, cybersecurity audits for compliance issues. Now, if you're going to be an employee, all small companies, of course, that have a single IT administrator are going to be security focused. But large companies that have big data security departments, they're going to basically be constantly upgrading, and they're going to be looking for skills in these areas.
Mm-hmm.
So this one company that called me a few weeks ago that got hit by ransomware, the hackers wanted $800 per file to restore. So they're really upping their game as far as how much money they want. And before assisting them, I asked if they had backups, but they said that they did, but those also got encrypted.
Oh, wow.
90, yeah, exactly. 95% of all Fortune 500 companies are using Active Directory.
Mm-hmm.
Those are skills that you're going to need. Yes, Linux is important, and yes, some people use Macintosh for reasons I don't really understand. But what you really want to do is understand Windows. 95%
Mm-hmm.
of your clients or the people that you go to work for are going to be using it. You've got to have basic Windows skills, Active Directory skills, and that will definitely help you as you go for your job search.
Okay. I'll just jump in real quickly regarding cyber insurance. By the time this video goes live, there will be an article on resources.infosecinstitute.com on whether your firm should purchase cyber insurance or not. I
Oh,
just
fantastic.
just got that proofed. It's going to go on the site in a few weeks.
Great.
Or we'll be there by the time you see this. So as online training becomes more ubiquitous, a la Infosec Skills, what are your thoughts on skills-focused training versus boot camps or four-year academic study on a subject? And can you sort of talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each method?
I've been to all those things, so I guess I can.
Yeah.
Boot camps are great for students that are just they have a lot of money or they get it paid for by their employer, but not boot camps tend to be fairly expensive. Several $1,000s for a very focused, short amount of time. So I wouldn't suggest boot camps where you go to them, pay this money for people who are just starting out. Usually they're people who tend to have
Right.
skills already. Now skills focused online courses are awesome because you can take an average Windows computer, add virtual machines to it, and run through a lot of different lab scenarios, or even use an online virtual setup that's going to work through your browser. So what all this is pointing to is context.
Hmm.
If you simply watch a video or you just read a book, it's not going to be enough. Context means having your hands on
Yes.
what it is that you're learning. So it makes all the difference when you need to show employers what you can do. So four-year colleges and universities are very important for those companies that need to just tick that box and say you have it. But most organizations don't, really care so much about that. What they want to do is they want to say, if you were in this scenario, what would you do? And
Yes.
you being able to know how to do that because you have context.
Hmm. So I want to talk a little bit about the way we study with regards to skills training versus, because when you're in college, or you're taking college at night, or you're doing a boot camp, like you really have no choice but to study. Like you've got tests constantly, you have a class you have to go to every couple days, or in the case of a boot camp, you're going for 5 days. So without a professor assigning daily or weekly tasks, sometimes these type of services are hard to stay on track to meet learning objectives. So do you have any tips to help lifelong learners stay focused on training and accomplish their
Uh-huh.
goals?
I have a few ideas.
Hmm.
Find out, first of all, you've got to get your mind right, right? So find out
Yeah.
in your own mind what's important to you, and then put it in front of you at all times for motivation. It
Hmm.
could be a picture of your family, your dog, your car, or even a picture of a pile of money. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty motivating.
Vision board.
So
Vision board it.
it's whatever takes you off of playing Call of Duty for a few minutes
Right.
and onto studying. Now, you
There
can
you go.
apply some knowledge learned from many teaching researchers, and that is delayed gratification. So, if
Hmm.
you come up with a reasonable amount of time that you should allow yourself to work, and just like I had to do, when I was getting my degrees while I was working, full time, and then you can reward yourself with playing a game, reading for pleasure, or maybe finally eating that candy bar that you wanted to eat.
Right.
Whatever works for you to make that reward worth the delay. So it's something that teachers look for. My daughter actually taught me this. She teaches music for elementary schools,
Hmm.
and it's one of the things that they look for when determining the maturity of students at a very young age. But some of us revert back and no longer remember how to delay our rewards, and so we
Yeah.
need to relearn that skill.
Yeah. So what should people be shopping for when seeking out skills-based training? There's a lot of skills-based education programs out there. What do you think distinguishes the best ones?
Well, the best skills-based training are ripped from the headlines, just like Law and
Yeah.
Order. You remember Law and
Oh,
Order? I love that show.
live it. Yeah. Every time I'm in a hotel room, it's on.
You
Hmm.
want to look for skills-based training that is based on what is in the news today. So if you see a lot of it online, you see a lot of
Hmm.
stories about it, and
Yep.
that means that employers are looking for it as a skill for hire.
Yeah.
So, as example, Azure and AWS are big. They're sort of fighting back and forth as to who's going to be the biggest, cloud type of thing. Well, companies are likely looking for candidates who know one or the other or both. And skills based on cybersecurity that are out there are fantastic. However, I found that they're a little bit uneven. Not, of course, at Infosec, but I've seen a lot of ones out there that are a little bit dodgy.
Yeah.
So you don't want to look for training that is based on a third-party product that may be gone tomorrow. You may end up
Oh,
completely
yeah.
wasting your time. So you want to look to the technology that it is representing. So for instance, instead of focusing on something like intrusion detection products from, say, Entrust or Cisco Firepower, you want to look for training on what makes a good intrusion protection service
Hmm.
first, so you're not wasting your time on a product that may be soon gone.
Right.
So skills-based training should have those clear directions. If you have to ask a forum or open a ticket on what a lot of the directions mean at the outset, then it's probably not for you. So make sure you're using technology that is relevant today, and find out when the product was made, its market share, the latest updates, when the last update happened. Did it happen a year ago or last week? All these things can ensure you're not wasting your time.
So for people who might want to sign up for your class in Windows 10 host security, and again, go to infosecinstitute.com/skills and use promo code cyberwork for a free month. What tips do you have for anyone who wants to get the most out of the class? And also, once you've completed the coursework, are there other areas of study you'd recommend to sort of build on after that?
Yeah. So one of the things I would do is make sure you have a separate monitor when you watch the video. Say if you're watching my Windows 10 host course or my upcoming Windows Server course, or a lot of the other different courses that are out there. So make sure you have more than one monitor. It'll really be worth the investment if you don't already have it. And you can follow along on your computer, or if, say, you install a virtual machine if you're worried about your host computer, getting damaged.
Okay.
So my courses are a little different from most instructors. 80% of my course is demonstration. I don't
Hmm.
use a lot of PowerPoints. I walk you through the steps you need so you can fully understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So the next course that I'm working on be out in early March. at least I believe it is, on Windows Server Security. So some of these concepts are going to be a lot, of course, about Active Directory, because that's what makes the server secure. So if you watch the Windows 10 version already, then you're probably about 25% of the way there by the time you get to the server course. You don't need to spend a lot of money on third-party products. Microsoft has built into their operating systems a lot of useful tools that can save you and your employer a lot of money.
And so, do you have sort of a track beyond Windows 10 and so forth? Where would you sort of learn after that? What builds onto that?
So if we're talking about, say Windows 10, and then we go on to Windows Server, then I would say we're probably going to look at what's really big is not just cloud, but also cloud using virtual machines and storage. I think one of the things that is really overlooked, and it was overlooked by this company that called me a few weeks ago, are the backups. Microsoft has come up with some great ways that you can ensure your backup security. And that's one thing that I would really like to get into is, if all else fails, you've got to have something to come back to.
Right.
So I would like to show people how to use what's called a Bastion Active Directory forest and domain to separate their backups from their production environment. And you could also use that in the cloud. You could create your Bastion forest and domain at Azure. You could create it in a data center. You could create it actually on site in your local area network. And I'd like to show people how to use access control lists using, say, Cisco routers and switches on how to protect one domain forest from the other.
Okay. So as we wrap up today, where do you see cybersecurity education going in the years to come? Are there any innovations you can expect on the horizon, or issues that you hope will be resolved? And also just, obviously we talked about the sort of acceleration of learning and the sort of obsolescence of things that are known now. Do you see education strategies that will sort of keep up with these problems?
Well, I love this question because I think 5 years from now, we're going to see new ways to educate that we haven't even thought of yet. I know the Infosec Institute has got some great skills assessment ideas and things that are, for 2020 and beyond. I think it's taking the right step. But learning is going to be like watching a video game. If you and I were watching what was happening 5 years from now, we'd probably have epileptic seizures because it's going to be, bells and whistles like crazy. But it's also going to train students faster than they've ever been able to be trained, before. There's $1 trillion hacking market out there, and I believe that the skills training combined with video training, that everything is interactive, is going to really drive that down and make us a lot more secure. So every step of the way of the training that's coming up is going to send you off to sidebar links, mini quizzes, other types of certifications, exactly what's happening in video games right now, side quests and things like that.
Right.
So we're headed in the right direction, for that. But I think 5 years from now, it's going to be very video game like.
Well, it's rare that I get to talk to someone on the show and have them say we're going in the right direction, anything security related. So I'll take that. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead here. One last question: if our listeners want to know more about Robert McMillen and your other activities, where can they go online?
They can go to techpublishing.com to learn about me, what I'm up to, latest videos I'm showing. This year I'm really excited because I'm building a brand new studio right in the Oregon coast, where I'll be adding training on a giant touchscreen monitor, virtual backgrounds, demonstrations on servers and other products that will make every tech-hungry person wanting more.
Cool. Robert, thank you again for all your fascinating stories and for being with us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. Or you can go to infosecinstitute.com/podcast. It's simulcast over there. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of these videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your favorite podcast catcher of choice. Again, for a free month of the Infosec Skills platform discussed in today's show, go to infosec.institute.com/skills and sign up for an account. In the coupon line, type in Cyberwork, all one word, all small letters, no spaces, for your free month. Thanks once again to Robert McMillen, and thank you all for watching and listening today. We'll speak to you next week.